So, hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. We're just admitting you all to the session. Hope that you're enjoying day 3 of the conference. And before I introduce our next keynote speaker, there are a few things I'd like to go through. So this is session LB. Please use this in your feedback after the session. We're supporting 2 charities this year, Lifeboats and Guide Dogs for the Blind. If you're enjoying the conference, please donate to these wonderful charities. This session is being recorded, and questions, please post them in the chat and Resley will answer them after the session. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Resley Costabel of Costabel Limited. Resley is no stranger to us at GSE UK region. She presents every year and always gives very interesting, lively and thought-provoking talks. She has won the Best Speaker Award at GSE many times over the last several years. Resley specialises in the art of science of psychology, and today she's talking about imposter syndrome. I'm sure many of us have suffered from this. I know I have. So with no more ado, I'll hand over to Resley.
Thank you. One of the top comic book authors in the world is a man named Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman was at a conference of the great and good. This was artists, scientists, writers, discoverers of amazing things. And one evening he was sort of skulking at the back of the hall, feeling inadequate. And he started chatting with an elderly man who was also attending the gathering. And it was just small talk, like small on a level of how they both had the same first name, Neil. And the elderly man turned to him and said, I look at all these people and I think, what the heck am I doing here? They've done amazing things. I just went where I was sent. And Neil Gaiman said to the other, yes, but you were the first man on the moon. I think that counts for something. Yeah, Neil Gaiman was talking to the amazing Neil Armstrong, and even Neil Armstrong had imposter syndrome. So what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome describes high-achieving people who, despite the objective success they haven't internalized those accomplishments. So they still feel as if they're a bit of a fraud and have this persistent self-doubt, persistent fear of being exposed as an imposter. Does this sound familiar to you? That even though sort of what other people say is, yeah, you do well, that you think, oh no, they're going to find me out any minute. I'm really not, I'm that. If you ever feel that way, could you please down at the bottom of your screen where it says reactions, give me some thumbs up. Oh, we've got them popping up like violets in springtime. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I do too. I have it too, absolutely. So what we're going to do today is we are going to start off with talking about what imposter syndrome is and isn't. And then I have ideas and exercises for your consideration. Now, I realize that you may be having your lunch. That's cool. This is designed so that you can, quietly enjoy your sandwiches or quiche or whatever's going on and still participate. One thing I would encourage is play along at home. Instead of just going, yep, I understand that. Put down the sandwich and engage with the exercise for a moment. You'll still get plenty of time to eat, I promise you. And if you pop any questions into the chat, Angie Stevens, our host, is going to compile those for me. And depending on how much time we have at the end, I'll see how many of those I can answer. And if we don't have time, I have a Facebook page, which is in the, excuse me, in the speaker information, and hit me up on the Facebook page and I'll answer them there. The legal disclaimer: this session is not health or legal advice. You are responsible for your own choices and actions. Suing me seriously wouldn't be worth it, blah, 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 blah. So what would it be? Shall we get started and get some insights so that at those times when imposter syndrome rears its ugly head, you're better able to deal with it? Would that be good? I'm looking for nods or shakes. Yes, okay, excellent. So a bit more about what imposter syndrome is. It is a mismatch between your competence and your confidence. It's when your competence is outstripping your confidence. Now, if it's the other way around, where you have far more confidence than competence, that's the Dunning-Kruger syndrome, which is an entirely different situation. So this is imposter syndrome. Optimum would be if your confidence and competence were a good match, of course. Now, it's different from low self-esteem. Low self-esteem tends to be pervasive. It's across the board, whereas imposter syndrome tends to be situation specific. Imposter syndrome is not a recognized mental health diagnosis or any sort of formal mental health disorder or anything like that. Instead, it's just something that we intuitively say yes to because most of us experience it. Therefore, there's not a lot of academic research and conflicting, mainly because there isn't an agreed definition of it that's like set in stone yet. So people are defining it in different ways and running off and doing experiments. So the results can conflict a little bit, but studies have found that anywhere between 9 and 82% of people experience imposter syndrome. Because the research is still quite young, to avoid going into like scientific research and stuff like that on it, because I might be doing what we call talking hooey. So let me ask you, I said it's situation specific. In what contexts do you tend to experience a touch of imposter syndrome? And if you could pop it into the chat, that would be great. Just in a word or two, because it could be an interesting experiment, and it gives me as a presenter something solid to anchor to, a bit of context. So for me, an area where I have imposter syndrome is culture change. People tell me I'm good at it, but I don't feel good at it. Now, I'm also terrible with financial stuff, like doing tax returns, and I feel bad about that. I don't feel confident at all, but that's not imposter syndrome. Why? Because I'm genuinely bad at those. It's not a case of my competence is up here and my confidence is down here. It's both of them are down. The feedback I get is not that, oh no, Resli, you're better than you think at financial stuff. No, the feedback is, Resli, you're kind of as bad as you think, or maybe even worse. So what's a situation where other people say that you're pretty good at this, but you don't feel it? I've worked with a lot of people where they say, oh, it's presentations or management, projects, meetings. Please just put what's right for you. And then we'll go into some tools for dealing with these. So I'm just checking the chat. Security conferences, presenting at this conference. Oh, bless you. New jobs, interviews, senior people, interviews again. Yeah. Networking. Oh, yes. Especially with this group, so many people are a little on the introverted side. So networking can be like, oh, what fresh hell is this? Oh, I love that. Throwing it away with somebody says you've done great and you say, oh, it's just what I do. Oh, wonderful. Technical expertise. Oh, you people are wonderful. Thank you. Please feel free to keep them coming. So we're going to go into some tools for how to deal with when this crops up. Now that we know what it is, when it's that mismatch between your competence and your confidence, so you feel like a bit of a fraud. The first one is, if imposter syndrome creeps in, name it. If you're feeling a bit of like, oh no, I'm an imposter, actually say to yourself, aha, imposter syndrome. This is that stuff Wesley was talking about. Naming it can be incredibly powerful. There are a few things going on. One is, instead of telling yourself, in over my head, I can't do this, I don't think I can cope, instead of filling yourself with all that garbage, which trigger parts of your brain that do the fight or flight and actually channels blood away from your brain, making you that little bit stupider, which none of us wants. Instead, you're replacing that with, hey, imposter syndrome. I spotted that. For bonus points, notice you have a choice. If and when you spot yourself doing a bit of imposter syndrome, you have a choice. One thing you could do is say, imposter syndrome. God, I'm doing it again. I'm never going to get this right. I'm useless. I'm a failure. Another option is to tell yourself, I spotted it. Go me. Yeah, I am going to get past this. I totally rock. So, tool one, name it. When you're telling yourself, aha, imposter syndrome, you're giving yourself something calming. You're reminding yourself, I may feel like an imposter, but it's called imposter syndrome. It's not called you really are pants at your job syndrome. You really don't have technical expertise syndrome. So name it. Second tool. And I love this because there were little hints of this in your responses in the chat. That thought that we sometimes have in our minds of, I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to make mistakes. You know, maybe it's not imposter syndrome. Maybe I really am incompetent. And if you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to make mistakes, please consider that, yes, you are. Of course you are. If you're not making mistakes, what in the world are you doing? You're playing it extremely safe. And look at your job description. Nowhere does it say, be perfect. Not even if you're a brain surgeon, not even if you're making airline guidance systems, not even if you're a mainframer. It doesn't say be perfect. That's why we have various checks and systems and teams of people. It's because we know that it's unreasonable to expect one person to do their job perfectly at all times. Yes, you will make mistakes. Have I made mistakes? All the time. And because part of my job is doing keynotes to large groups of people, when I make a mistake, it can be in front of hundreds of people. In fact, in this session, there may be more than 100 people, and I guarantee that I've already made mistakes, and I will make more. Now, does that make me an imposter or a fraud? No. Do you know what it does make me? It makes me human. And I'm okay with that. So I have a quick exercise for you. Get ready to type in the chat box. Can you be okay with me being human and making mistakes? Can you be okay with me being human and making mistakes? Please pop a yes or a no into the chat box. Oh, I'm getting quite a lot of yeses. Second question. Can you be okay with you being human and making mistakes? Please pop a yes or no into the chat box. Yeah, we're getting a little bit more of the maybe sometime I'd be annoyed, I should do better. And it's interesting too. I've actually had a stopwatch quietly running in the background. I think the answers to that second question are taking longer to come in. Isn't it interesting? And I invite you to notice, did you find it quick and easy, even if you didn't type because your hands are all like they've got maze on them or something? Did you find it easier to give a yes to, can you be okay with Wesley making mistakes, being human and making mistakes? Was that easier than, can you be okay with you being human and making mistakes? Here's a tool for you. Aim for brave, not perfect. So when it comes to making mistakes, and if you're telling yourself, oh no, I'm going to mess up, aim for brave, not perfect. And I'll leave this section with one of my favorite quotations. It comes from ancient Greece, just so you know how cutting edge all my material is. To avoid criticism, say nothing. Do nothing. Be nothing. So let's move on to something a little later, shall we? There's a woman named Amy Cuddy who has done a TED Talk that has had more views than any other. I mean, it's more than 45 million views. That's how good it is. She has done research into how, well, you know how if you feel, sometimes if you feel bad, you do the posture of feeling bad. She's done research into what if we do the posture of feeling good and confident? How does that affect us? So I'm going to explain more about this in a moment, but for now, I'd like you to please take the leap, not quite literally, but you're going to be standing up. So please put down that salad, step away from the salad. What you're going to do is, and I'm going to be doing this with you. So I'm going to monitor back, stand up. Stand up on your feet. Great. I can see some people standing. And hands on your hips. Hands on your hips. Put your feet apart. Nice and strong and balanced. Hands on hips, feet apart, shoulders back. Now, could you please imagine that your superpower cape is flowing out from your shoulders behind you, flowing out in the breeze. You are Superwoman. You are Superman. You've got your superpower cape going. Imagine that superpower cape going and hold that pose, because Amy Cuddy found that when you hold this pose, or some of several other power poses, for about 30 seconds, you will feel far more confident. And some of the studies have shown that it decreases stress hormones and increases testosterone, which gives you a bit of whoa when you hold it for 30 seconds. I realize that sometimes this isn't suitable for the open plan office. That's okay. I have experimented myself, and I found that if I just sit up straight, get myself balanced, and imagine that my cape is flowing back from my shoulders, that I feel more confident. For those of you not playing along, oh, you're so missing out, because the feedback I've had from previous times I've done this session is that this is the best bit. So get your cape on. And now, because that's probably been 30 seconds, could you please, keeping your cape flowing, have a seat again. Back to that set. By the way, if you want an example of people making mistakes, the first time I did this, it was a different setup where everyone was visible on screen. And as soon as I said stand up, for the next sort of 30, 40 seconds, we just had this sea of crotches on the screen. Oops. Does that make me a failure? No, it means I failed at thinking about how I set that puppy up. Our next tool. So we've got our name it, our change, but I'm going to make mistakes, to be brave, not perfect. And we've got your power pose with your cape flowing behind. Next one is to challenge your beliefs. Unhelpful beliefs, and I've seen hints about these in some of the chat comments, are I have to be able to do all of this all the time by myself perfectly. Does that feel kind of familiar? Are those some beliefs that might be sneaking around in the back of your mind? If they are, please run down to the reactions and give me some thumbs up. That sort of belief, I've got to get this right. I can't make mistakes. It's not okay for me to mess up. I should be better. Yeah. I love that one person wrote, I'm the queen of making mistakes. No, you aren't. I will challenge you for your title. I am the queen of making mistakes. I'm the one who in her first keynote stood in front of a load of senior architects and managers at IBM and got the name of the CEO wrong. Yeah, beat that. Yeah, lots of people. So a lot of us have those unhelpful beliefs, and I have those too, absolutely. Here's something that helped me start to shift from that. I was hired for a job by a man named Colin Wilkinson. And I said, I'm not sure I'm up to this. He put me as head of training and change management. And I said, training, yes, change management, woo, that goes into all that culture stuff where I've got imposter syndrome. I said, I'm not sure here, Colin. And he said, good. I'm hiring you for the job you can do in 5 years. He said, I hire for potential. If you can already do all this, you're probably going to leave soon. You're going to get bored. I want to hire you and then stretch you. You're going to grow into the role. And I thought, wow, what if I gave myself permission to grow into roles? What if I changed some of my beliefs to it's okay not to be completely competent right from the start? Or it's okay to learn as I go, or even it's good to learn as we go. How about if I told myself most people are capable of most things? Well, I know the GSE folks are very high on the intelligence scale. What if you changed your beliefs to there's not much I can't learn? Or we all deserve the opportunity to grow into being the best selves we can be. One of my favorites, I don't know everything, but I know enough. I know enough to get started. Those are some of the beliefs that can get in the way. What would it be like for you? How would you be affected if instead of thinking, I have to get this right every time on my own in its entirety, if you change that to, we're learning as we go. I was hired for my potential. I don't know everything, but I know enough. What would that be like? So I've got some optional home play for you. Home play is like homework, except it's not work, it's kind of fun. Home play is to jot down after this session, what beliefs might you have been holding that contribute to imposter syndrome? Those beliefs that keep undermining you and making you think I got to get it right all the time perfectly by myself. And what beliefs could it be helpful to replace those with? So challenge your beliefs. The next tool is easy because it requires doing nothing. Actually, it requires doing less than nothing. It requires stopping something. So I was on a call about imposter syndrome, and one of my hosts said something, and I sort of said, Muskan, and came in and gave her a little challenge. I'll tell you what it was in a moment. Muskan came back to me later and said, and I wrote down what she said, so I'm going to read it here. I've completely stopped doing that. It's made a difference. It's out of my dictionary now. And it makes you feel more confident, more direct, more clear about what to say rather than hiding. So what was this tool? She had said, I'm just part of the team. And I said, Muskan, what's with the I'm just? Excuse me. What's the I'm just? You're not just anything. You are part of the team. I wonder, do you ever find yourself saying, I'm just an administrator. I'm just an IT person. I'm just a new grad. I'm just somebody who stumbled into mainframing. You ever say that? Well, stop that garbage. There's your next tool. Stop it. Don't do the I'm just. Now, a lot of times it's about where you came from. So I was working with a woman who'd started off as a typist and made her way to a very senior position in the same organization. And she was extremely self-conscious, like, because she's up at director level. And she said, but all these people know that I was just a typist. It's like, what do you mean you were just? Use it as a strength. Alan Sugar, one of the moguls in Britain, he's proud that he started off as a barrow boy in East Street Market. And I live near East Street Market. I can tell you, it's a complete dive. But he doesn't feel embarrassed or self-conscious around the other businessmen, businesswomen. He actually puts it out there. He says, I started as a barrow boy at East Street Market. And so for the woman who is a typist, I'm like, hey, look at all the other typists. They're not director level. You're not, I was just a typist. So no, I was a typist. I've made it to here. And frankly, we all have some embarrassing jobs. One of my first jobs, I was a professional bread butterer. Yeah, that was a move up because I literally started at the bottom. I was working as a carer and did my bit of what they called personal care for people. I literally started at the bottom. And I'm fine with that. Worked with another man who's one of the top people in his field in a white collar profession. And he had imposter syndrome because he's telling himself, oh, I'm just a boy from the wrong side of the tracks. He failed his 11 plus. He doesn't have a degree. And yet he's a leader in his field, highly respected in multiple countries. The feedback he had was from his manager was, everybody else makes Skodas, you make Rolls Royces. He needed to cut out the, I'm just a working class boy, I'm just a non-graduate. He needed to cut that out. Here's a thought. There are a few people who are born fully formed, like the Roman god. I think it was Aphrodite, born fully formed from the waves. But the people who are, those who are born into something, they're a little likely to be the actual imposters. It's those of us who've had to work for it, who didn't have advantages, who failed the 11 plus, who started off in a lowly position. And folks like that have made it. I'm thinking, wow, you must be incredibly smart and capable. So your next tool is, instead of saying, I'm just, say, I am. So the next time we do a face-to-face conference, Herb Daly, tell your young students. I don't want to hear anybody saying, oh, I'm just one of Herb Daly's grads. It's no, I'm one of Herb Daly's grads. Take out the I'm just. Next tool. And this one's fun. Have a smile file. Restley, what is a smile file? Well, I call it a positive reinforcement file, but that's because my background in psychology, and we call it positive reinforcement. A smile file is a compilation of all the good stuff people have said about you. So my smile file, I'm lucky because a lot of times with what I do, people write evaluations at the end of it. So they actually write down what they think of me. Now, sometimes that's not so great, but a lot of times it's really positive. So I just take those and I compile them. I have a Word document. It's well over 100 pages now of little snippets where people have said, that was amazing and it changed my life. You know, Dave Hallerby, EDF Energy or wherever. And I write it, I put it in the file. And if you have this happen, but if you just don't have people writing this stuff to you, if they say it, you can write it down. That happens all the time. People will, on the evaluation, people will say, thank you, Restley, that was a useful session. Then they come up to, because they're being British or whatever, and then they come up to me afterwards and they might hug me and say, thank you so much. That's made a huge difference. Everybody should do this. I'm like, I wish you'd written that on your evaluation, but I can go write it down. So I do, I write it down in my file. Thank you so much, Restley. That's made a huge difference. Got a hug. Everybody should do this. I write it down. Now what that's doing, that's helping drill it into my brain. Even if I'm just doing a little copy and paste, helps drill it into my brain. You know when else it helps? Let's say, taking a few of the examples you have, if you're about to do networking or be called on for your technical expertise, got some meetings to go to, you're presenting, senior management, security conference, those sorts of areas where you can feel some imposter syndrome. Before you go in, go read your smile file. I tell you what, I have had like some sort of meeting with big, impressive people, and I've been feeling intimidated and thinking, oh, it's just little old me, and otherwise telling myself all sorts of really unhelpful stuff and having the imposter syndrome just ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. I go read my smile file, and I don't know if I've ever got to the end of the pages, because usually I can't get past sort of 3 or 4 pages before I'm like, I rock, yes, I can do it, go me. I mean, I'm feeling on top of the world. And once I've got to that feeling, I read a few more so I feel even better. And if there are areas where you're thinking, I don't have enough to put in my smile file, make it up, make stuff up that you know is good about you. If you're thinking, you know what, actually, I have a good sense of humor, write in your smile file, I have a good sense of humor, even if other people haven't said it. If you know it, it still counts. Maybe it counts more. And keep a smile file going, compile so that you have this repository of your amazingness. So we've gone through a few tools. First, name it. Aha, imposter syndrome. And it's true, I'll make mistakes. Yes, you are. Go for it. Be brave, not perfect. Your power cape, challenging your beliefs, dropping I'm just, keeping a smile file. And now, what to do with praise and criticism. Does anybody else do the equivalent of when I was a kid in school, if I scored a 99% on an exam, I would lose sleep over that 1%. And I'd beat myself up. And if you're really unlucky, maybe you had other people saying, oh, why didn't you get 100? And when I've messed something up, like when I had the, well, like just now, wiping my nose in front of 100 people. Sorry, folks. It's cold in here. It's tempting to go away and think, oh, God, that was embarrassing. Who wants a keynote speaker standing there doing nasal hygiene in front of everybody? It's easy to kind of brood on that. And yet, very often, people find it easy to, when they get a compliment, oh, they don't brood on that. They don't lose sleep, staying awake, thinking, wow, they said this. That means so much to me. Maybe I did really well. Maybe I'm worthy. No. What I've noticed is that people very often externalize praise. So you get some praise, and instead of soaking it up, you externalize it. Now, this comes in a couple forms. One is you attribute it to an external reason. So someone says, you did great on that project. And you say, oh, shucks. And then you do something on the equivalent of, it was the whole team, or I'm just doing what I'm paid to do, or after the mess I made last time, I should hope so. Or like Neil Armstrong did, oh, I just went where I was told. So that's one form, finding an external reason for the success instead of, yeah. The other form I often see is brushing it off. Oh, I should hope so. I've done it a million times. For a change. Oh, it's not a big deal. Some way of brushing it off. So I'd like us to do an experiment. You ready for an experiment? Sandwiches down. Here's the experiment. I am going to give you the same compliment stroke feedback 2 times. The first time, I want you to brush it off or externalize it, just find some way to get rid of it. So it might be, oh, the equivalent, oh, I had a lot of help. Oh, you should see the mistakes I made. Oh, you should see the mistakes I made. Oh, this old thing, it's from a charity shop. Find some way to brush it off. And then the second time, I'm going to ask you to take the compliment, just accept it by saying, thank you. That's all you have to say. So you ready? First time, find a way to brush it off. Second time, say thank you. Here's the compliment. You've done some excellent work this quarter. Brush it off. Okay, now pause, shake that off. Do it again. This time you just say thank you. You've done some excellent work this quarter. Just say thank you. Now let me ask, and hit me up in the chat. Did you find it easier to brush it off or soak it up? So please write brush or soak in the chat. Which was easier? Brush, 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 always. Oh, bless you. Yeah. Brush, brush, brush. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I want you to notice something. Theoretically, it should have been harder to brush it up, because for soaking it up, I told you exactly what to say. Thank you, 2 words. You didn't have to come up with anything. For brushing it off, I gave you some ideas, but you had to decide what to say. So it should have been easier to take the compliment, but so far, looking at the chat, it's unanimous for brushing it off. And that seems very, well, kind of 2 things, very, very British, and also quite sad to me, because I think, gosh, I don't have children, but if I were raising a child, would I want that child to find it easy to brush off compliments and hard to soak them up? It's like, no, I'd want them to feel confident and good and be a happy little confident person. But we do this to ourselves. So I'm going to offer you a challenge. We're going to do the exercise again, where I'll give you the same compliment or feedback. And this time, and you're all on mute, nobody can hear you. I want you to say aloud, thank you. Just say it out loud, just to push yourself. Ready? You did some excellent work this quarter. Wow. Notice how that felt if you were playing along. And if you weren't, you're missing out. Just go for it. Want to push it a step further? Okay, I'm not saying you would ever do this in real life, but this is GSC, right? We got a family vibe. This is a keynote. You're at home. It's just you, dogs, kids, whatever. Nobody can hear you. I'm going to say it again. This time respond with, instead of thank you, 2 words. I know. So here we go. Say it out loud. You did some excellent work this quarter. Yeah, how did that feel? Was that a bit like, huh? Yeah. It can feel really hard to take the praise. And yet a key cause, part of the definition of imposter syndrome is not internalizing the praise. So when you practice the thank you, you will be chipping away at the imposter syndrome. And with the I know, maybe sometimes you can say that silently or say it where nobody can hear. So be a sponge for praise. And at the same time, there's something important about being Teflon for criticism. So that when you score that 99 but get 1 wrong, instead of, oh no, I'm a failure, I've messed up. What can be tempting is to let it define you, to take what you got wrong and say, so I failed at this becomes I'm a failure. I messed up the presentation becomes I can't do presentations. I don't know everything about technology means gets translated into I don't know enough. All these criticisms that instead of taking it as information, we can end up taking it as something that defines us. It's more useful to let it be information. Quick examples come to my mind. I do volunteer work. I'm deliberately taking this away from the work sector. I do volunteer work for charity, and I foster animals that belong to elderly people who are terminally ill or in the hospital, can't look after their animals. I look after them. And I'm looking after 2 dogs at the moment, and I love them. One of the dogs got into some rat poison and had to take a trip to the vet, which cost 738 pounds. I know. I felt awful. I mean, the dog felt awful too. The dog's okay, by the way. She's great. She has recovered. But it was really tempting for me to think, I'm terrible as a volunteer foster mother for these animals. I'm terrible at it. I nearly killed an animal in my care. I've cost the charity a huge wad of money. I'm a bad fosterer. But instead of letting it define me, I need to change it to information. So information is, I'm going to be a whole lot more careful about the whole rat poison thing. And I failed at this, not I am a failure. And the charity seems to be cool with me. They're letting the dogs stay with me. They've been with me 3 more weeks since then. And believe me, I was in tears over this, literally. I was thinking, oh no, I've nearly killed an animal. When you've messed up, even when you mess up big, you can use that as information about what you can do in the future, not information about who you are as a person or what you're about. So when you have made a mistake, be careful what you do yourself. Use it as information and keep it as situation specific. So if I have messed up a presentation, and I have, instead of saying I'm a terrible presenter, say I did terribly in that presentation. Not I'm a failure, but I failed at that. Keep it situation specific. Use the information. Because after all, failing doesn't mean you're a failure. Failing doesn't mean you're an imposter. Failing, true failing, would be letting that failure define you. Would be letting it define you. Last tool, and this one takes kahunas. Have cheerleaders. These are people you know are on your side and will tell you that you've done great. So I have cheerleaders within GSE. Angie Stevens, who's hosting this session, is one. Aileen Wynn, who hosted another session I ran this year, she's one. That if I'm feeling unconfident, they'll tell me, no, you've got this. Notice who your cheerleaders are, your champions, your buddies, and hang out with them. And here's the really brave thing. I have a couple of people who, if I'm feeling big imposter syndrome, and I'm like, I can't get out of this, I'm scared. I have 2 people where I will literally phone them and I'll say, Jim, I've been asked to do X and I'm scared that I'm not up to the job. Could you please tell me I can do it? And I'll hear him sigh and draw a deep breath. And then he'll say, Wesley, of all the people I've known and worked with in 30 years, you were the one who, and then he'll go into all this stuff that leaves me wagging my tail and purring, back to the animal theme, and just feeling really good and confident about myself. And if Jim's not home, I phone Denise. So have some cheerleaders. This is in addition to your smile file. The smile file is something that you keep and you've got on record and you can go to at any time. Cheerleaders is for when you need to hear it from somebody else and you need to hear it right then. So we've covered a number of tools. We've covered name it. Just say, aha, imposter syndrome, and that will help decrease it. We have your super cape. Challenging your beliefs from, I have to do it all perfectly every time, it's all on me, to good enough is good enough. And with the team's help, we're going to get this done. Taking the phrase, I'm just, and jettisoning it. Did I say that right? Jettisoning. Yeah. Taking it out of your vocabulary. Being a sponge for praise, being willing to say, thank you. And by the way, if that feels a little sort of bald, just to say thank you, I often add, that means a lot to me, because it does. So just thank you. And for criticism, be a little more Teflon. Take it as information. Keep it situation specific. Don't let it define you, because it doesn't define you. Have your smile file. And lastly, have your cheerleaders. Now we have time for a little bit of Q&A before I wrap up. So let me see what's shaking in the comments. Angie, I'm looking for comments. Angie was going to compile them. Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Angie.
Yeah, there are no questions in the comments at
Okay.
the moment. So I don't know if Megan can unmute so that people can ask you.
Okay.
If you like.
Oh, there. Okay, I've asked all to unmute. So if you have a question and you want to unmute, go for it. Hey, and you don't have to get it just right or express it perfectly.
It's Misty. How are you doing?
Misty, hello. It's so good to see you again.
Hi. All right. I have a crazy question of something I've been thinking about. I do a lot of speaking about unconscious bias, and I think we talked about it yesterday where no, we didn't. One of the things I personally have struggled with is wondering whether I'm good enough because I've internalized that unconscious bias of, a woman shouldn't be in tech, or I realized when my husband retired that I had been leaning back in my own career because his career was the career and mine was, I didn't want to be at home. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I really realized that I had internalized that external bias, despite being a rabid feminist, by the way.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on the intersection between unconscious bias and imposter syndrome?
Oh, what a juicy question, Misty.
Leave it to me to come up with something off the wall.
No, it's great. And I love that you started off by describing it as, use the word crazy or something.
Yeah.
Wow, listen to Misty undermine herself. And yet I do the same thing.
There you go.
I think most of us do. So in terms of unconscious bias, let me just say a little tweak about that. I guess my nutshell definition would be unconscious bias is we all grow up as part of a culture, as part of a community, and that culture has biases and we kind of soak them up. So I grew up in the American South. And I was nicknamed Bunny as a child. Can you imagine? I was blonde. I was this tiny little blonde thing with a Southern accent named Bunny. Yeah. And I internalized a lot of, I should be nice, let the boys win. Being assertive or angry isn't pretty. And the most important thing is to be pretty. I internalized a lot of that. I internalized all sorts of garbage. And we all do. And it's not because we're bad people, but we do. So I'm every ist on the planet. So here's the thing. The first thought that will come into my mind might be, I can't do this, or like my job's not a real job, or an I'm just. And that's the unconscious stuff because the culture that I've been brought up in and still swim in. Mm-hmm. The second thought is powerful. The second thought is where I come in and say to myself, nope, I can't do this. A woman's place is the workplace, or whatever works for you. And people have all sorts of reasons for having a little bit of, oh, do I belong here? Am I good enough? Maybe it's that you're too old or you're too young. Maybe you think, oh, I'm just another old white man. Or maybe you're thinking, this is a weird place for people my color. But whatever it is, I find it helps to have a mantra of some sort. And that might be, I belong here. It may be more personal. One that I use is, my father was a real alpha male, quite a fierce person. And when I find myself going all little Southern belle, I'll say to myself, I am Charlie Costabel's daughter. And that just, yeah. So I wonder, Misty, first of all, I've kind of, is there anything in there that you can find that you can make use of?
Oh, well, the minute I realized when my husband retired and everything just suddenly changed.
Yeah.
Emotionally, and I did the soul searching and I figured out what was going on. That's when I started to address it. And you know, I think you can't fix something you don't recognize, right? So the imposter syndrome, and I saw some people, I said it in the chat and I saw some other people saying it as well. We're not given permission to be proud of our accomplishments from a very young age, right? Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. And I think that has an impact on why so many of us have imposter syndrome. Is it feels shameful to be confident in what you've done and accomplished, and it feels modest and therefore good to brush off compliments and to brush off taking ownership of what we've done.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel a lot better now.
Oh, good.
I feel it coming in, you know what I mean? I call it like the dark shadow that I feel start creeping into my head. And then I pull out the light inside my head and I beat it back. That's the imagery that I give myself.
And there can be a difference between what we say in public and what we say in private. I've had people come up to me, well, after that first IBM thing where I got the name of the CEO wrong, I also had 7 people come up and say, this has changed my life. And so I did a few things. One is when they said that, I said, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. But what I did privately is I went back to my room in the hotel and was like, yes. And I was singing, I am the champions, my friend. I'm not going to do that in public, but privately I can do that because I'm aware that particularly in Britain, and more for women, if somebody says a compliment and you say, thank you. I've sometimes been told, oh, you're a bit full of yourself. It's like, okay, I'll take the compliment in private then. So I love your question. I love your thoughts. Thank you. And by the way, for those who missed Missy's, I can't even say it.
I'm also from the South.
Missy's session yesterday. It's recorded. Go back and see it. So let me wind this session up by asking you, was the session perfect? Did it have your full attention 100% of the time? Am I the world expert? Nope. Did I at any point stumble over my words? Say something unclear? Say something you disagree with? Run over time? Yep. But was it at least a reasonably good use of your time? Was it beneficial? Was it enjoyable, at least at some points? Are you left with the impression, okay, Resli doesn't know everything about this, but she knows enough? Because if so, then it was good enough. I am good enough. And you are good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Resli. That was a great session, as always. I think we will all be much more confident and brave with our power capes. And I love the smile file and the cheerleader tools. So thanks again. And once again, this session is LB for the feedback. So please all go and give Resli some great feedback she deserves. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to soak it up.
Good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.